Hello everybody, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Yeah, you should be able to hear me. So hello everybody. Back for a short live coding session after a long while. And this time I would like to look at one of the long running bugs that was in WinUI regarding StackPanel spacing, which was fixed recently in the first preview of WinApp SDK 1.5. which was a huge deal and many people are excited about it. So now is a perfect time to include this fix in Uno platform as well. So I think this is the issue that was basically explaining what the problem is. The thing is that when you have a stack panel with multiple items like here, and you have one of those or multiple of those items are collapsed. Previously in WinUI, the spacing between the buttons, between the second button, first button and second button, and the second button and third button was preserved. So there was basically double spacing, even though there was no element displayed. And many people had to work around this with many weird fixes and workarounds, and actually there was a custom version of StackPanel created just to fix this specific bug. So it was a long-running bug which was annoying everybody, and now it's fixed. So let's implement it in Uno as well. So let me just adjust this. And hello, Dominic. Hello, Dominic. Yes, it is one of the things that was driving people crazy, and now finally we have a proper fix directly in WinUI. So let's see how let's actually see how it behaves, because it's worth seeing first to understand what the difference is. I have two different projects here with the same linked main window XAML, so they both have the same XAML, and I will run it here. So this is WinUI 1.4 and earlier, where you can see when the button 2 is not visible, there is a huge space between these two. And when I switch to 1.5, you will see the spacing will be half what we saw before. So this is what you expect, because you have spacing of 50, so there should be spacing of 50 between the two items which are visible, which is not the case when there is a collapsed item between them. So the 1.5 behavior is what we currently have in Uno platform as well, because we are aligned with WinUI, so we are also aligned with their bugs and quirks in behavior. But now that it's fixed, it's safe for us to fix that behavior as well. So let's start working on that. So I will switch to master, get a new branch, and let's try to fix it. So let's go with spacing StackPanel, and we'll see how hard it will be. It should be, hopefully, unless I'm missing something very crucial, and unless there will be some additional unexpected problem, it should be hopefully a quite easy fix. So I have target 2.7, so we will be developing against Skia targets. And actually what I can do also is I can get the Microsoft UI current preview branch and see what the change in StackPanel actually was. So let's go to 1.5 stable. This is the branch where they are developing the preview version of 1.5, which is kind of confusing. And now let's find StackPanel implementation. XCP control. No, not this one. So it was DSAML, a lib, and maybe here. Okay. GitHub is trying to keep up here. And it's not loading, so yeah, it's kind of too big to display. Let's try again. Okay, and Edge froze completely, which is nice. So let's do it locally. Maybe it's gonna be faster than this. So source, no, DSAML, XCP, DSAML, lib, and here we should have StackPanel partial. I'm not sure if it's the partial file. Okay, let's do it like this. I will just open VS Code directly here, and maybe that will make things easier for me to... Yes, typical Edge, unfortunately. What is your so far experience with the new Arc browser on Windows? Is it good? Is it getting better? Right, here we have StackPanel measure override, a StackPanel arrange override. Those are the ones that I want, but I want to see that file history. So I will try again here with Edge, and I will go to that branch WinUI 1.5 stable DSAML, and let's just replace this with this. Is the full path? It doesn't seem to be. There is one DSAML. Okay. Let's see. All right, here we go. So this is the latest version, and I think if I go... So this is probably the change that fixed the problem. So I will do git blame. Maybe we'll see the... All right, actually I can go with just file history here. And if I compare... What is the compare here? I want to see the last commit in this file. Specifically this file, but this will give me the whole thing, which will be hard to load again. So StackPanel. I just need to see this file. Diff. Okay. So the change is seemingly very simple. So in measure override, there is one check that says is visible, and that changes the visible children count that's there, then used to calculate the total size, the spacing, plus the size of items. And then in arrange override, it's just checking if the current child is visible, and then adding that to setting that arrange to the height plus spacing or width to end spacing, and that's basically it. So nothing too complex. But there is one important catch here, because we don't currently have the ported version of StackPanel from WinUI. We have our own implementation, which we are going to be updating to the WinUI code. We actually have an open PR for it, but the current implementation is not yet exactly the same. So we will have to implement it ourselves instead of relying on the exact code changes from WinUI, which will make things a little bit more interesting, because I will have to kind of think through my own solution instead of just copying pasting the real solution from WinUI. But hopefully it's going to be still quite doable. So this is the file where we'll be doing the changing. So this is the StackPanel.layout file, which contains all the layouting things, so measure override and arrange override. And we need to properly implement it, we need to implement tests first, because we need to make sure that the change is properly tested. So I will just kill this app for now. So we need to make sure it's properly tested. So I will create some basic tests, a few basic tests to cover this scenario. So StackPanel, and we will have this some spacing test. No. So what I will do is I will create a new test method, and we'll call it task when spacing all visible. So this will be just basic test. What happens when all the items are visible and there is applied spacing? So I'll be verifying the total spacing, the total height of the control. So let's do a StackPanel, and there is something from Copilot already. So the StackPanel has spacing of 10. I don't need this because I want it to measure it automatically. So I will do window helper dot window content equals StackPanel, and I will make it vertical. That's gonna be easier to see. And then what I want to see when it's loaded, I want to make sure that assert are equal. The height, total height should be 20 times 3 plus 10 times 2. So we have two spacings and 3 items displayed. Hopefully this should be the proper size of the element. Then we want to have all collapsed. So this will be alternative where all of those will be collapsed. So it means the desired size. Oh, yeah, the touch support missing on Arc is kind of bummer because it makes it hard to use on touch screens, of course. But yeah, maybe they will get there. They will definitely get there. and then the loading definitely seems faster, as we've seen on WebAssembly applications. You can see the difference. It's huge, the difference between loading the same website on Edge or Chrome versus Arc. So they are doing good stuff there. So Okay, so if everything is collapsed, the desired height should be 0. And then finally, when mixed, okay, so there is a mixed version here. So yeah, Copilot basically wrote exactly what I wanted to write. So we have 3 items. The middle one is collapsed, and the spacing is there only once and twice the size for the items. So when I run these tests now, we should see these 3 tests. Oh, right, actually, the first one should pass, but the other 2 should fail, and then we will try to cover those with tests. With fix those by fixing the stack panel, and hopefully they will then get green, which will be the proper test-driven development. The good thing is that these runtime tests, are running across all the targets. So it's running on Android, iOS, WebAssembly, and Skia. So I just write this test once, and it should get then verified on CI against all the targets that we have. So that's a good thing, that I don't have to really run it locally on all the different devices, and I just can rely on the fact that the CI will test it properly for me. But actually, we can try one more thing here. This is the new playground in our samples app, which allows us to quickly test things directly in the first main page of the application. So if I run this, we should see the same behavior as we saw on Windows. So there's the double spacing, I think. So if I remove this, you can see that number 2 was added, collapsed. So visibility equals collapsed. So now there is that button missing, and if I remove it completely, the space becomes smaller. So the bug is there, so we can see it visually here. But now let's run this and space sync and run this here. So we can see, as expected, 2 tests failing and 1 test is passing. And this one is not failing for the right reason here, because the control is loaded but has 0 size. So in our case, we are not handling, we are not waiting for the right loaded event instead. So apparently it seems that this case where everything is collapsed is correctly handled. So let's maybe do this a different way then. And we'll just subscribe to StackPanel loaded, and I will just do the proper check for loading. So it's loaded, true. I'll have the boolean, it's loaded, and then I will do wait for is loaded. So this way we should be all good. And we'll see if this now passes, because in this case the case where everything is collapsed is handled correctly. So that would make things easier for us. Okay, it seems so. So collapsed is giving us 0 desired height. So that's good. So now let's fix the mixed case scenario. So what we have here, I'll just stop the debugging and let's focus on the code. So in measure override, and because these are just these two methods, I will just make it file scoped namespace. So in measure override, we should be counting the number of children which are visible, not the number of children, the total number of children. So we have this add spacing boolean here, which decides if the spacing should be added. And currently it's checking just if we are at the end of the list of children. But instead, we should do something along these lines where we check if the child is visible and then we skip the spacing. So we can do is we can take this is visible. So we have the view is UI element, so that's good. So bool is visible equals visible. So if it's visible, then we add the spacing. So the condition should be we're not at the end, and also we are visible. So that should take care of this part. Yes, hopefully that's the right condition. And now in arrange override, we need to make sure that we are arranging correctly when the child is not visible. So spacing, count, and now we get the desired child size. So again, we have the same kind of check here, even though here it is reversed. So we have at spacing if we're not at the first index. So if we're not at the first index and view visibility, or rather let's do it. Oh, it's fine, I think. So visibility is visible. So this will be taking care of the check if the spacing should be added. So maybe, because this is readable enough, so I think we can just do without that boolean variable. So it's aligned on both sides, even though now this part is not aligned with this one, but we will be porting the StackPanel code anyway, so it should be still good enough. Okay, so now actually we can do that test with button 2. So now we have double spacing, and if we do visibility equals collapsed, we should get smaller spacing, which seems to be okay. And it should be the same spacing as if we remove the button completely, and that's the case as well. So that's pretty good. Now the spacing test. And it's passing, so that's pretty promising. I'm thinking if we could add some more tests to this, just to make sure that we are covering all the bases. So So I will do one more test to see if multiple collapsed, just to see what happens if we collapse multiple items. Let's see if ChatGPT, or rather GitHub Copilot, can tell us the right, oh, not all of them, but I would like to have one of them visible and the other two should be collapsed. So now we should have desired height of 20. And what we can also do is we can check the same thing for both orientations. So what I would like to do is do data row and do orientation, just to make sure it works both ways. Orientation vertical, horizontal, and the same thing here. Visible, yeah. So now this means that we need to check orientation. Oh, I don't have the parameter there, so we need the same thing here and here and here and here. And we need to check, instead of height, we need to check if it's vertical, then it's going to be height. Otherwise, it's going to be StackPanel desired width. And so the same thing will go here as well, and here as well, and here. What I can do, maybe one more test here. I will take this, last two collapsed, multiple collapsed. I would like to have one more item here, so let's make this one pink. So two will be collapsed, two will be visible. So now the spacing and the size should be 2 times 20 plus 10. Okay. And maybe just for fun, one more test where the first two will be collapsed. Or maybe a good one would be this one. So now the middle one is visible, but the outer ones are both collapsed. So the space should be, there should be no spacing, and there should be just one item there. Right, let's see. What about these tests? Because this one might actually fail as I think about it, because this one is collapsed. We'll be on the first index, and then we will be adding the space for the item which is not supposed to be there. Exactly, so we'll have multiple fails. So as you can see, adding enough tests is always beneficial. So when spacing all visible is failing for horizontal, that's weird. Let's see. What did I do wrong here? This one shouldn't be failing. Oh, of course. Quite important is to put the orientation actually in the control. Otherwise things don't make sense. All right. Better. Now it should be less red, but still red for good reasons. Yes, so we have two failures now. One is the last two collapsed and one is outer collapsed. So let's work on the last two collapsed first. I think that will be easier. So in StackPanel layout, we need to make sure that measure gives us 20 and so this one. This should give us 20 and the arrange should also give us 20. So, right, so now, oh, it will be a little bit trick here because we are getting measures for many other things, not just for our intended StackPanel. So, yeah. Oh well. What I can do is I can okay, let's see. 2 collapsed, so we should give that measure, get that measure right after this. Okay, so we 3 items, spacing is 10, and now we get the first item, and we are trying to add the spacing even though we shouldn't be adding it because the next item is not visible, so that doesn't make sense to add it. So maybe the better thing to do will be to have first visible, so I would like to do something like we'll add the spacing before the item if it's not the first visible child, and or maybe let's do it this way actually. We will be the counting method is easier here because we don't need to actually move the spacing, so it makes sense to just count the visible children. Visible children count. We will be adding 1 or 0 based on the visibility, or maybe for better readability I can do visibility equals visible and increase that count there. So this will give us more accurate or easier code, and it's actually more aligned with what WinUI is doing. So now if it's horizontal, and we will be adding the spacing visible children count -1 times to that proper axis of the desired size. So this should be taking care of the measurement. Now for the layout. I think we should be adding the spacing before the element, and only in case it is actually needed. So if it's if it's if it's not the first visible child and it's visible. So this will give us so initially it should be true, or rather, okay, let's do it like this. So if the view is visible, and it's the first visible child, so this we want to make sure that this is not applied anymore afterwards. So if we apply it's not the first visible child, yes. So now we set that flag to false afterwards. So for the next round, if the view is visible and we know that it's not the first visible child, and we add the spacing. If we had a number of invisible elements, and then one of the next ones would be visible, we would still keep this is first visible child to be set to true. So then that spacing would be set to false properly, and we wouldn't add the spacing before the first visible element. So yeah, all right, so I hope this is correct. And now the thing is that instead of we add the spacing before the element, so this should be okay, I think. So now if I'm not mistaken, this should be a correct implementation. So the question in the chat is why the UNO VS Code extension is not functioning well. Can you expand on it? Maybe would be nice to have your information, because we are trying to make it better all the time. So if there is something not working well, we would like to know about it, and definitely we will be looking into fixing it as well. Okay. Last two collapsed, so we should get our StackPanel. Yes, that seems better. So these are green now, and I think the other one would be this one, right? This seems to be green as well. So let's do StackPanel given StackPanel. And everything seems to be passing, so hopefully this should be the full solution for the spacing issue. So if you have any suggestions or questions or feedback for this fix, let me know, because I will be creating the PR. So let's go to fork, and I will first commit test. And then the fix as well. Oh yeah, indeed, like VS Code is unfortunately much more stable and usable right now, even though it still lacks some features of Visual Studio Full. So it's for me it's still a better place to work in is Visual Studio, but VS Code is very efficient. I like the fact that you can very efficiently search among files, and it's actually the best possible experience for development on macOS. So I guess, yeah, it's a good choice. And our extension should be working. So if you have any specific suggestions or problems with it, please create an issue or just ask on Discord or GitHub discussions, because we want to make it as good experience as possible, especially because Visual Studio for Mac is no longer there. So VS Code is basically the way to develop on Mac. So I want to make sure that any feedback is recorded and fixed. Hello, Lambda. How are you? Right, so I think we can commit this. I will just link to this issue from Microsoft. This one. So. Okay, I'll commit this, and now let's push changes. So our fix should be now ready to become a PR. Well, I'm not directly maintainer of the VS Code extension, but we have I have contact to everyone in the team, of course. So I am happy to forward the feedback to anyone who is to the people who are actually maintaining those parts of the code base. I did implement some small parts of the IntelliSense support way back, but since then it has changed significantly. So I'm not even sure if any of the code that I wrote is still there. So definitely we are happy to look into any issues. And actually, I will create also an issue for spacing. Let's see if there is already some issue talking about this. Doesn't seem so. So I will just create a new one. So what is the issue number? Layout, and it was a easy one, right? So starter. So it works on WinUI and everything was affected, but I think it's fine. We'll just close it immediately anyway. So that's it, and that's it. And next we just describe collapsed. Right, create pull request. So what we should do after the build is done running, we should also validate the screenshot tests, because those show any discrepancies between the behavior before the changes and after changes. So if something would change in an unexpected way that would indicate something got broken, that might be something that's not covered with tests, and we need to also make sure that it's fixed. Yes, WinUI unfortunately has still a lot of bugs and performance issues, but I think it's getting better because the team is now really seems to be focusing on fixing bugs and improving by adding new features and getting things done really. So finally, it seems there is some traction, some speed and velocity in the team of getting things done and getting new features and bug fixes out. So this is a good example. The spacing issue was there for such a long time, since the beginnings of UWP and maybe even Windows Phone. So it was a huge amount of time before it was fixed, and now it's fixed, and many people are very happy about this. So I think it's one of those things that got finally better, and we'll see. Maybe there will be some more information about where WinUI is at build. So we'll see. The question there in the chat is, how do you get better as a developer? So I think the best way that you can go about it is to really look into open source space, because there is a lot of open source projects that are suitable for beginners. And I actually started out as app developer, but then I found UNO platform, started contributing, and I must say that I would never learn as many things as I do now when I'm contributing to UNO, because there is so many things that you learn when you're writing code that runs on all different platforms and all different targets. So definitely, like, open source contributions are a great way to learn from people who are more experienced than you and can give you guidance and can help you really learn and contribute things to actual real world projects that are there in open source community. So open source is a great way to go. And also, of course, just trial and error and developing your own projects, because I started as I mentioned, as an app developer. So I was building applications back then for Windows Phone, and that was basically the start of my software developer career. So it's a great way to go. Building just some projects for yourself, or something, projects that are related to something you're passionate about, because then you can learn more quickly and more efficiently, and you also create something that you yourself can use and what can benefit you. For tips to learn Git, I'm actually, if you're asking for Git, there are many good tutorials on YouTube, but you could also go to Microsoft Learn Git, because they have introduction to Git tutorial, and it goes through the real basics of Git as a source control and what it does and how you go about using it. So I sent the link in the chat, so you can go through this one. It's really into the basics, the very basics of Git, and then you can take on something more advanced, because there's of course a lot of depth to Git. So you get started with this, and then you can expand on that. And if you want to learn GitHub and Git, I have started doing a GitHub Foundations course on YouTube. So you can follow this one. It's not yet finished because I'm still working on it, but there are 3 videos out there already, and you can continue with go along as I create more. But yeah, I think this is good. It's a good start. And actually, I think there are, in the GitHub section, you can go with and many of those learning paths are good to start with. And I think there was a specific learning path for GitHub Foundations. Foundations. Oh, not here, but yeah. Let's see, GitHub Foundations. So there is the certification from GitHub that you can get for the intro to Git and GitHub. There is a specific learning path on Microsoft Learn that goes into all those things that are related to Git and GitHub. So you can follow this one as well. I mean, if you're so the question is when you are a C# developer, MAUI developer, and want to work with US companies, I guess, and are not proficient in English. So I think like so if I just take UNO platform as an example, we have many non-US developers. Actually, none of us is native US based developer. We have developers in Brazil, we have developers in Egypt, we have developers in Australia, we have developers in Czech Republic. So I'm in Czech Republic with Dominic, who was in the chat before. So we don't really, we are not strict about English. So if someone has trouble, speaking or pronouncing properly in English, that's not a big deal. I'm not pronouncing it properly as well. So it's something just, it's a minor thing as compared to the value that you bring in code and contributions. So I think if you can type in English, it's still enough, and you can be a beneficial team member in a US-based company as well. So I don't think that's a big problem. And if you can type in English, you can probably talk in English good enough for daily development. So I guess that should be no problem. So right, but you didn't write your problem with UNO extension in VS Code. So if you still want, you can send it into our Discord channel or on our GitHub as an issue, and we are happy to fix it. So please post it. The more issues, the merrier, because the more issues, the better code coverage and better fixes we can bring. So, all right. So I hope this will pass the CI. We have now this step is always failing, but these are the ones that are relevant. So we'll see. But for now, I think this should be all I wanted to go through today. So this was really quite a short one, but hopefully it was a good example of how a small contribution to UNO platform can look, and also how we try to align things with WinUI as they are releasing new features. There is a lot of new things in each release, so the aligning of new code that WinUI is adding with UNO platform is getting a little bit more complicated, because we need to go through more files and through more changes to actually align everything properly, but we are getting there. And definitely the stability of things is getting better as we are porting things from WinUI to UNO platform, because the C++ code that is there, and even though it's in many cases slower and less performant than UWP, for example, it's still battle tested, and they have a lot of tests running through it, and it's all verified. So it's good to have the opportunity to port things from WinUI, especially for the more complicated things like time picker or date picker and stuff like that. All right. So I hope this was an enjoyable session. So if you like this, please subscribe to our channel, to my channel, or to my Twitch as well, because we'll be doing more videos, more streams, and more fun with UNO platform. And with that, I thank you for joining. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.